It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Hey, welcome to the program. Welcome back to the program. We've got Brenda Vassar-Taylor on the line. She's from Commerce in Action, and I wanted to bring her in and let's talk a little bit about truth. Brenda, welcome.
Thank you, Paul. Appreciate being back.
Absolutely. So we just wanted to talk a little bit about this Senate District 16 race. Most notably, it's interesting that when we hear where certain candidates are on positions, there has been the tendency to come back and just say, well, one side is lying about the other. Have you been following any of this?
I have, Paul, and I appreciate the time that you're giving me to sort of give some perspective on that. First, let me remind the listeners, if they don't know who I am, I'm a tax attorney, CPA credentialed, been a lawyer for nearly 40 years. I'm a farm girl. Father was a cotton farmer. Husband was a rice farmer. Homeschooled my 4 children. We moved to the Fayetteville area about 10 years ago, and we deal every day in provable facts. If we are only financially successful when we can win in court based on what we prove to be true, and that upholding under the rule of law what we say is correct is what we deal in every day at my office. 2 of my adult children are attorneys. One is a CPA. The other one, sells farmland. We're not salesmen. We are people who deal in facts. Now, as you or your listeners may know, I'm part of the Conduit Liberty Machine, and that's what we do in our political work. We deal in provable facts. And because I have been involved with Commerce in Action in the Senate District 16 race, I'm very familiar with an ad that was put out by one of the PACs, Truth in Politics, listing 15 issues. I know that voters in Arkansas care about the issues. This is a Republican primary, and it's based on, we want, I assume, at least it has been in the past, that Republican voters want to elect someone who reflects their positions. So this ad was put out with 15 issues. 14 were published in the newspaper, 15 online. The differences in the 2 candidates. And they were accompanied with 3 pages of sources, line by line, linked to either videos when the candidates stated these facts, surveys where they answered the questions a certain way. And, of course, our governor has said for the last 3 years he is going to support and is entitled to support candidates who support his policies. And so we have quite a bit of experience watching our governor do this, and so we knew what that meant as well as far as the position of the candidates.
So what?
Now, with that said,
go ahead.
Go ahead.
Well, I was just going to say. So what do we do when you have facts that are well sourced, and yet we have letters, like we had a letter that go out this week from the Breanne Davis campaign talking about lies and distortions, that are going around in the campaign, and people who support one candidate over the other. I mean, but these aren't lies. These are actual positions that she's taken.
Well, we've only been involved in this arena. We don't make a living in politics. Our members of our organization, we work for a living, and then we do this as a contribution to helping to make Arkansas a better place. But we've been doing this since about 2014, and we have watched that one of the number one strategies of the political industry is projection. So you can be assured when they start accusing their opponent of a certain thing that that's what they're guilty of. It's just as dependable as anything. But in 2014, one of the first races we were involved in, the number one line from the opponent was, private option is not Obamacare. And that was rather a staggering statement since private option was Medicaid expansion. It is Medicaid expansion, and that is one of the 3 tenets of Obamacare. And then in 2016, we see the election of Eddie Joe Williams, Jane English, with the governor standing behind him saying they have never voted for Obamacare. Mm-hmm. Well, they had voted several times.
Yeah, it wasn't
true.
Key vote. That wasn't a true statement that Asa made.
Absolutely.
Asa had to take the conservative position.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
Yeah, it's amazing sometimes when you really think about it. We always hear about the national media and how they are corrupt and how they are one-sided. And, of course, we have plenty of evidence to suggest that, right, where they leave the truth on the cutting room floor, or they just don't want to give us the truth and let us make up our minds for ourselves and that sort of thing. But the same thing, I mean, the same thing applies to statewide media in many regards. Just in terms of, well, for example, I mean, this is the question of, this would be my question if I was an outside observer and all I was doing was, let's say I was just vaguely familiar between the left-right paradigm in the in American politics and in Arkansas politics. Let's just say I was vaguely familiar with it. And obviously, you know that the media, I think you would see that there is, in the mainstream press, there's like a big disdain for Republicans for the most part. Unless you can get a Republican to come on your show at a time when most Republicans are moving one direction. If you can get one Republican to come on your show and bash other Republicans, then the media is all about that. We've seen this before. For example, when Asa Hutchinson decided to go on MSNBC or CNN and bash the Obamacare repeal effort last year, you saw that then. But if you just had kind of a vague, I guess just record in your mind of observations that you've been making about the media, you would say to yourself, in the mainstream media, there is literally nothing that President Donald Trump can do that is right. And even if he does, even if there are moments here or there, I mean, generally speaking is what I mean. Generally, there's absolutely nothing he can do. The spin is just, you had one CNN anchor say that if he could solve the North Korea thing, he'd go down as a great president. And then, of course, I don't know, have we ever heard from her again? That's a joke, but you did get that. My observation is in Arkansan, though, and I think others would be as well, is why does the mainstream media nationally not say one positive thing, generally speaking, about President Donald Trump, but the mainstream media here in Arkansas says and actually contorts itself, bends over backwards to try to promote Republican Governor Asa Hutchinson? Why is that? It's fascinating. It really is. Obviously, we had this with Mike Beebe. You had a ton of institutional press support for Mike Beebe. Every other day, there was a story or a headline about how popular he was. 70%, 75% approval. I mean, they just couldn't get enough of that. And the reason was because most of them are Democrats, and this was at a time, some of Beebe's, it was at a time when you had Barack Obama, who was a Democrat, and a very unpopular one in the state of Arkansas, and yet it was Mike Beebe was giving the Democrats all of this hope. Oh, he's got such a high approval rating. I don't know. That's what the press was doing with Beebe. And then, of course, they were just falling in love because Beebe was able to get his agenda passed, even though there were there was a slight Republican majority in the House and a little bit larger one in the Senate. They were just really, really happy with that. Really positive press coverage. still positive. Is that maybe if you're governor, you just get positive press. Maybe are the rules of political differences, does something happen when you cross the borders of Arkansas and the press just becomes like a professional publicity reputation defender? Is that what happens when you become the governor? I'm just curious. I find it odd. I don't think it makes sense that the governor has all kinds of positive publicity here from what is, at the very least, a left-of-center media, statewide media. And yet that same left-of-center media, at the least nationwide, constantly attacks Republicans who try to limit the size of government or try to enforce the will of their constituents. And most oftentimes, and this is where it really gets interesting, oftentimes the mainstream media, when they attack this congressman or this senator or that senator, they are attacking senators and congressmen from rural districts. And these media outlets are based on the East and West Coasts, and they have disdain for flyover country. They have disdain for these rural districts. Why is it, though, that the statewide media so publicly embraces the policies of Governor Asa Hutchinson? Now, some of them have been calling it down the line as of recent because the governor is in primary mode, and he is now campaigning really far to the right, and it is campaign rhetoric. A lot of people on Facebook are picking up on this. But I did I watched Roby Brock and John Brummett talk business and politics. They discussed Governor Hutchinson's attacks on Conduit News, and John Brummett floated the idea that it doesn't make any sense to attack Conduit News. Doesn't make any sense unless they have polling data that makes them concerned. And I thought, I've certainly had a similar thought of that. John Brummett also saying that the governor is moving so hard to the right with things like reducing government agencies by 50%, but Brummett actually said that that doesn't mean the size of government will shrink diddly, quote, diddly, end quote. Thought that was interesting. That it is, even liberal John Brummett is saying this is just election year posturing. Then, of course, he referenced the tweet that we referenced on Friday. I heard somebody else bring it up yesterday as well in one of my conversations that I was having with a friend, that the governor has this paid-for tweet going out talking about how he was the first to stand up against President Obama's guidance when it came to little girls and little boys in bathrooms at schools. Remember that? And, of course, that's not the whole story, because the governor refused to allow. We talk about control. There were constituents with real issues asking their politicians to run bills, and the governor would not hear it. The governor's nephew would not allow it, to actually talk about protecting young children in state-funded, paid-for facilities. And so that didn't happen. And yet, I mean, if you're on the left, you probably really hate, the idea, the line I took there, right, protecting privacy, because you think it's about LGBT, RSTLNE, would you like to buy a vowel, rights. That's probably what you think. Okay, all right. But can you see, are you a little frustrated at all that the governor, who essentially refused, probably because politically he's scared of the LGBT community. I mean, he's scared of you guys. So he was like, no, we're not going to run a bathroom bill. So, I mean, from your standpoint, I would disagree with you, but from your standpoint, LGBT people, you think, oh, he protected our rights. Well, now he's going and he's actually putting out statements that are trying to communicate the opposite. Now, I would call that a deception based on what actually happened at the Marble Palace last year with him and other legislators contorting themselves trying to protect the governor from having to veto something he disagreed with or having another Religious Freedom Restoration Act snafu where he backed the bill. Asa even got a Democrat on the Judiciary Committee to flip and vote for it, and then he said, nope, I can't sign this because Walmart called. I can't sign this because the halls of the Marble Palace were lined with LGBT, RSTLNE, would you like to buy Val, activists. It's easier for me just to say RSTLNE. I'm just saying, I actually heard that all my life. I can't keep up with the rest of the acronyms. I'm sorry. The telephone number, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. All right, let's okay, so one of the things that we have noticed over the last 3 years here at Conduit News is that the governor really likes to govern by task farces. So if there is an issue, right, he likes to whittle down the 135-member body to about, 15 people, give or take. That's kind of what he likes to do. And, of course, it disenfranchises everybody else who's not picked, not selected. They still think they've got to have Democrats on the task force. Of course, they want to have the Democrats on the task force because the task force Democrats are going to vote with the Republicans because the Republicans on there, or the leaders on there, are going to grow government. That's what we've seen out of this. If I want, I would just say, like, if I want, Democrats should, maybe one or two, but, they always want to, the Democrats need to have a say. Well, no, the Democrats should win elections. See, if they want to have a say, they should win elections. But far be it from me. No one's going to listen to me when it comes to that kind of stuff. They're afraid. See, that's when they would start getting criticism from the liberal media. Right? They would finally start getting criticism from the liberal media. We have to understand the reason they're not, back to the original point, the reason they're not getting criticism from the liberal media here in Arkansas is because the policies they are enacting are not rocking the boat, and they are things that the liberal media here in the state agree with and heartily support. Got to keep that in mind. But so, back to the task forces. That's how we govern. Well, the most recent example of that was there were some Republicans who thought for themselves last year, and that was their downfall. That was their mistake. You had Senator Bart Hester, who dared to think for himself for a moment. He thought for himself that he should file or draft a bill that would actually get the ball rolling on real tax reform. You had Charlie Collins that for a moment thought for himself and wanted to push for real tax reform. And he wanted to do it in the general session. And the governor said, no, you can't do that. We've got to pass my measly $50 million tax cut that's not even in effect yet. We've got to pass that. Last I checked, it's not in effect. It may be coming soon. We got to pass that for low-income Arkansans who don't make any money at all so that I can put it on a postcard and I can get reelected. That's what we have to do. And Senator Bart Hester and Representative Charlie Collins said, okay, and the governor said, okay, we'll do a task force and we'll study taxes. And then in 2019, keep in mind, Arkansans have started voting for Republicans en masse in 2010, and we're not going to see actual tax reform for almost a decade. And it probably will be a decade because they're not going to make the taxes immediate in 2019. We're going to have to wait till 2020. Only took a decade. So they're out with a report. The task force met yesterday, and it meets again today on taxes, this blue ribbon commission that the governor had. I'm sorry, this multi-ribbon colored commission that the governor decided to call because, again, we don't want 135 people debating tax policy. It'd be easier to have, about 20 debate it, and then we can kind of guide the results and get what we want. Yeah, so they hired a consultant who is a lifelong liberal Democrat, Randy Bauer. He got fired late last year after we had been railing against him for months and reading his Twitter, talking about how Trump is dark and Obama is light, and he said that tax cuts are not tax reform, and this is the guy that Senator Jim Hendren hired. And then, of course, they fired him because he was incompetent, but I think they fired him because there was just such outrage, even among the Republicans on the committee. They're like, this guy is a liberal, and we're going to pay him $300,000. And by the way, you don't need a consultant when everybody knows what tax policy they support and which tax policy they don't support. Okay, there are two schools of thought in America, right? You have the socialist one and you have the free market one. Are we going to give all the government our money and trust them to put it all in one big pot and divide it up equally? No. Are we going to let the people have more of their money back, lower taxes, less regulation? But see, that requires that the government operate on minimums and not be obsessed with the maximum amount of tax dollar they can take from us. And that, unfortunately, was the subject of the task force yesterday. And they were talking about exemptions. And so we've got this list here. I'm going to get to it when we come back, but show this list real quick, Joe. Exemptions from the 6.5% Arkansas gross receipts tax and compensating use tax. These are the exemptions. And so what they want to do is they want to eliminate the exemptions of the sales tax, and then they claim cut taxes so that it's revenue neutral. That's their goal, even though some people were sold that it was different. I think they should actually cut spending and everything else. I don't think they are going to cut spending. This is all designed as a shell game, in my opinion. I hope I eat crow. If I eat crow, that means government's gotten smaller. It's a shell game, in my opinion, to claim they reduced your taxes, but reality, there's going to be the same amount of money going to the government, if not more. And again, Arkansas spends almost $8,000 per person on our government when surrounding states spend $5,000. Right? Why can't we just get down to $5,000? Oh, but the governor, he's going to cut state agencies by 50%. That doesn't mean that, and John Brummett even said it, that doesn't mean that government is going to shrink by one dime. They even specifically mentioned spending. That doesn't mean he's cutting spending by 50%. Can you imagine if the governor had said he would reduce spending by 50%? Wow. They'd freak out. But it would probably just be 50% from the increases, the $600 million in spending he's increased over the last 3 years. All right, we got to go to break, folks. Don't go anywhere. This is Conduit News Radio. Good morning to you. We got a great show ahead. Got a lot of stuff to get to. We've got the Jefferson County judge resigning after him saying that he took the bribe. We also have Senator Linda Chesterfield in the news, and records of her with Preferred Family Health Care. You remember that's the organization tied to Rusty Cranford. We got a lot of information to get to. Don't go anywhere. Back in just a moment.
In Arkansas, every single hour there is a politician not getting what they want. For some, it's an absolute nightmare. The sleepless nights wondering if progress will ever come. Lying awake pondering how to grow government in this political climate. Asking questions like, why don't my constituents want to pay a few cents more in taxes? Everyday politicians feel abused and neglected. These politicians are starving for power. They're hungry, confused, and they don't understand why no one seems to care. Will you be a patriot and commit today to help these poor, starved for power public officials? It's simple. All you have to do is commit to stay silent and never dissent or stand in the way of your politicians' rise to power. Never speak up or get engaged to stop the growth of government. By committing to these simple steps, you will ensure the life of your politician will be filled with contentment and the respect they are desperately seeking, as well as campaign contributions from lobbyists.
This message brought to you by Aristocrats Serving Arkansas.
PHP Parody. Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yep, it's me. Here we are. Exemptions from the 6.5% Arkansas gross receipts tax and compensating use tax. This is a document that was presented yesterday to the Tax Reform and Tax Relief Tax Farce, the Department of Finance and Administration, Economic Analysis and Tax Research. It's hilarious how serious people take themselves at the Marble Palace. I'm telling you, it's psychologically, you're very convinced. All right, for those estimates that have been updated to the blah, 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 blah. Okay, this is the key paragraph to focus on here, because this report is what the people are thinking. Okay, this isn't just some unbiased report. In this paragraph right here, quote, the exemptions are grouped in categories as a guide and do not represent official categories in law or regulation. When appropriate, individually enacted exemptions may be combined, even if enacted in different years. So you understand this is whether it's unavoidable, whether good or bad, it's unavoidable. All things that government does, all reports that governments do, are political because they are run by men who are instructed by other men, and eventually you get, and this idea, Barack Obama was a master at trying to convince the American people, we got to pass the budget. We got to pass the omnibus. Because the government just got to do things government got to do. We got obligations. We got to meet those obligations. That Obama was great at that. Because what he was essentially saying was, well, government just does things, and it's fine. It's benign. It's not political. But what you've got to understand, and I think, just someone who's engaged, you have to understand all things that government does. And I would be saying this if there was a real Ronald Reagan as conservative in the governor's office. All things that are done by government are political. There is a political ends to them. Okay? You have to understand that. So this is from Department of Finance and Administration, but it is a political document. Okay, next. Second page, exemptions from the 6.5% Arkansas gross receipts tax and compensating use tax. Look at what is at the top of the list. Motor fuel exemptions. So motor fuel is on their list because it's exempt from the 6.5% gross receipts tax. However, don't we already have a gas tax per gallon? Boy, don't you know they would love to double tax gas? Well, gosh, they already want to, right? That's Ace's whole thing. He wants to tax the wholesale of gas and diesel. Back in a minute. Studio, we got State Representative Brant Smith is with us. Brant, welcome back to the program,
Well,
sir.
good morning, Paul. Thank you for having me.
Real quick, What's going on with the legislature right now? Is the special session still going on?
No, it ended last Thursday.
Okay, and everything got wrapped up?
Everything's wrapped up, and we're just ready for basic committee meetings from time to time and maybe some other business, but we're done.
Yeah. Well, congratulations on being elected the whip of the caucus.
Well, thank you very much. It's an honor to be the majority House whip and just serve not only the caucus but the people of our great state.
Yeah, it's really, really good. I'm excited about that, and because I know what your voting record is, and so it's good to whip that platform of the Republican Party.
Well, and here's the thing: the word whip has a negative, definition attached, but to me, it's more about influence. It's more about encouraging legislators to, at least in the Republican Party, and I would even encourage Democrats to support the Republican Party platform. It's a good platform.
It is a good
one. But just to do the right thing.
Yeah.
And that's what I'm going to do.
There's an old Seinfeld episode where they ask, well, what does the whip do? And Kramer's like, well, because, Kramer doesn't know. He just talks to him. Well, in the olden days, if people weren't voting the way the party wanted to, they whipped them.
Fortunately, we don't actually tie anybody to a post and make them conform, but there is an opportunity for me to show influence. Well, I would have been whipped a lot.
yeah,
and was as a child, so I don't want to go back to those days.
Recently, we're talking with State Representative Brant Smith. Recently, you were, I'm sorry, let's just talk about the letters to the editor. So there was a letter to the editor from Senator John Cooper. Now, you represent District 58. Okay, which is, you're actually my state representative, so congratulations on having that honor. I moved. I was in Ladyman's district, and he's very relieved that I'm
his
no
loss
longer...
is my gain.
Oh, okay. All right. I appreciate that. So you're in 58, which is in Jonesboro. And so Senator John Cooper, who is the senator for a good part of Craighead County, he actually penned a letter to the editor critical of you and three of your colleagues from this area in Craighead County and the House because of your vote against the DHS budget that included Arkansas Works Obamacare. Right. And he was very critical. There was a response from State Representative Dan Sullivan that I thought was really good. What's your reaction to that letter from Senator Cooper?
Well, first of all, John has been a good friend of mine for a long time. And, he did...
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, we're going over this is exciting stuff. We're going over the exemptions that the Arkansas Task Force on Taxes they're debating, the things that you're not paying, right? Because they have to have, right now, I mean, this is the truth in terms of where their mentality is, okay, in this task force is, we need maximum taxation, right? Maximum taxation. Jerry Seinfeld has a bit about the different strengths of medicine, like Aleve, ibuprofen, Tylenol, ultra strength, maximum strength, extra strength. Give me the maximum allowable human dosage, he says. Figure out what will kill me, and then back it off a little bit, okay? It's a very funny joke. Jerry Seinfeld is hilarious. Now, that seems to be what the mentality is of many people in government. Figure out the maximum allowable human taxation. Figure out what will ruin the economy and then back it off a little bit. That's their mentality. We want to have a different mentality. What if the mentality was this? Why, if the task force was worrying about government minimums. That's what this task force should be about. It should be about what is the minimum amount of money that government can survive on. The minimum. That, ladies and gentlemen, is what their goal should be. That is not what their goal should be. What is the minimum amount of expense rather than the maximum amount of taxation? And guess what? We, the people, can have a say in this. We can define this. I think we have by voting for Republicans. They still haven't gotten the message. We, the people, need to define how much they want to pay, how much we want to pay. And whatever it is we decide, then the government needs to work with that, not the other way around. Back to the taxes, though. At the top of this list is the motor fuel exemption tax. And look at the amount of numbers. Look at this. Look at how much money they're losing by not taxing our gas, the full sales tax. It says gasoline or motor vehicle fuel on which the gasoline or motor vehicle fuel tax has been paid. Wait, so there's already a tax on gasoline? Yes, just not the 6.5% tax. But there is already a tax on gasoline. So they're saying if it was taxed at the retail level, meaning when you go to the pump, you tack on 6.5% of whatever the total price is, that the state would get another $304,419,244 a year. If it's taxed at the wholesale level, the state would get an extra $206,687,494 a year. Now that's $200 million. The tax at the wholesale level is what Asa Hutchinson wanted. It's what he supported. It's what Dan Douglas wanted. Anyone that can wear a mate dress, I got a lot of respect for, okay? So that's number one, gasoline and motor vehicle fuel on which the gasoline. You know, it got back to me, by the way, that Dan Douglas, State Representative Dan Douglas, who's a Republican, who has a primary challenge, by the way, in Scott Richardson. And the reason he drew the primary challenge is because Dan Douglas championed every tax increase that the Republicans wanted or that the establishment wanted. And anyway, it got back to me that Dan Douglas is actually a fan of the music montage in a way. It's pretty funny. I mean, I had more fun making that. I actually owe Dan Douglas a little bit of gratitude. Aside from the fact that I disagree on his policy, and I couldn't disagree with him more. He's got style. I'll give him that. 870-275-9799 is the telephone number. All right. Number two, sales on motor fuel to owners or operators of motor buses operated on designated streets according to regular schedules under municipal franchise or municipal transportation purposes, $110,000 a year. Okay. Anything else? That's kind of the big money there is that number one. That's what they're looking at. And if you told them right now that they could double tax you, they could increase your they'd do it in a heartbeat if you told them they could get away with it. Say there won't be any political consequences if you go ahead and just raise the tax on a 6.5%. They would do it in a heartbeat. Now, do you think that you would like that if they raised your gas taxes 6.5%? And then they lowered your income taxes. And they would claim it's a wash, by the way. They'd say, oh, it's revenue neutral. Don't believe that, by the way. They're going to find a way to get more money going into the government than there is now with all of this. That's what they're going to find a way to do. All right, then there's federal government exemptions, purchases legally made with food stamps or the supplemental. Oh, they won't even touch that. There's no way. There's no way they'll touch that. All of a sudden, they'll want the Democrats to have a voice. Oh, we got to give our friends across the aisle a voice. Never mind the fact that they keep losing elections in the state. Here's an interesting one. Media exemptions. Scroll down. Now, this is what is coming down the pike. This is what they really, really want to do. Okay? I'm just letting you know. They want to start taxing services as well as products. And the reason is because they're gonna throw out, you're gonna hear this, that back in the 1950s, most people were buying things. They were buying products. And it was a product-driven economy, right? More so than a service-driven economy. And so services, okay, let's say like, you don't pay sales tax when you go and you get your hair cut, right? You also don't pay, you just don't pay it for services. Now, specifically with media, okay, it's a service. You're providing someone advertising, for example. Not a taxable thing with sales taxes because it's not a product. It's not something tangible. It's not something that you can, you really want to quantify. I don't know if you guys can't see this, but I can see it. We have we're recording our podcast audio only version, and as I'm talking, I can see that my voice is appearing, in some sort of, I don't know, what would you call that? I don't even know. Anyway, it's just basically lines on a screen, and those screens made up of pixels, and it's populating right now as I speak. How do you quantify that? You want to tax that in the form of an ad? I mean, the ad is just going out over these airwaves. It's air. It's thin air, man. You don't tax that. So that's why you don't tax it. Number one. Services purchased by radio and television companies for use in providing their services cost the state $4.6 million a year. Sales of newspapers. I didn't realize sales of newspapers were exempt from taxes. That is actually you hold that. Of course, not if you do the online thing, though, right? $2.6 million. Sale or rental of advertising space in newspapers and publications, $11.7 million. The sale of billboard advertising, $6.1 million. The sale of any publication other than newspapers through regular subscription, $2.2 million a year is what state would get. You see the mentality I'm talking about here, though? Is a different mentality. What's the maximum allowable human taxation that would kill us? Back it off a little bit, Jerry Seinfeld. All right, exemptions for low-income households. And they got medical exemptions. You can just see all this here. Agricultural exemptions. Uh-oh. Look at that one. Sale of baby chickens in Arkansas, $20 million. The sale of livestock, poultry products, and dairy products of producers who own not more than 5 cows. That's just 109,000. Excuse me. Thought that was 109 million. I was like, ooh, they're going to want to get their hands on that one. Okay, what else do we have?
Sales of twine used in the production of tomatoes.
Where do you see that? Oh, wow. Well, that is a strange exemption. I'll give them that. Which one is it, Joe? The sale. Number 4, the sales of twine used in the production of tomatoes. Okay, yeah, so there are some interesting exemptions there. Yeah, oh, yeah. Joe says that's a low-hanging fruit issue right there. Sales of cotton, seed cotton, lint cotton, baled cotton, whether compressed or not, $16 million. The sales of seed to be used in commercial production of any agricultural product or agricultural seed, $31 million. So these exemptions. Now, you tell me, think about that. You think they're really going to take this? If they were to end these exemptions, you think they're really going to do you think they're going to you think they're going to cut taxes that full amount? We're talking a lot of money here. Now, maybe. I don't know. But something tells me, folks, that what we're talking about here is, we have all of the evidence we need to make these assumptions. And the Speaker of the House, on the first day of the task force meeting, when he brought the special task force together, he made a correction because the media was reporting that the task force was meeting to recommend future tax cuts to the General Assembly. And Jeremy Gillum said, no, that is not necessarily the goal here. The goal is to not recommend future tax cuts. And then that prompted the Lieutenant Governor, Tim Griffin, to fire off a letter kind of saying, I'm urging you guys to please focus on spending cuts as well as tax cuts. Because if you just do the tax cuts and you shift taxes, it's essentially not really a tax cut. You're just shifting things around. But if you couple that with spending reductions, you actually will have a decrease in the size of government, and you'll have less money going to the government, which will actually be a tax reduction. Less, meaning the people are now, the obligation, the burden to fund government is now lighter than it was before. It's not a complicated thing. It really, really isn't. All right, anyway, so we're going to keep, they're meeting again today, so we will keep you posted on that. And like I said, this document is fascinating to me. Again, it is a political document, kind of shows you what's on their plate, what they're looking at. This is a lot of money, though, if you look at this stuff. That gas tax there, $206 million for the wholesale. That's about what it was going to raise if Governor Hutchinson had gotten his way and gotten the gas tax passed. So keep that in mind. We're going to take a break, going to reset here. When we come back, we got more news to get to. I want to get to your Facebook comments. Feel free to sound off. I know it's spring break this week. 870-275-9799, or check us out right now, facebook.com/Conduit News. That's facebook.com/Conduit News.
If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Exposing the truth and everything the Marble Palace establishment keep trying to cover up. It's Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell. It's a Paul Harrell parody.
When the politician starts, he says liberty's on the march, but the Marble Palace sure has its ways. And the voters who believe realize they've been deceived. when words are weighed next to deeds. Asa doesn't care about our Constitution. His conservatism is an illusion. Line item vetoes and higher taxes. We all voted for him once, but he won't make spending cuts. Let's all vote and say, hey Asa, we won't get fooled again.
Wait. Who is this?
The carefully crafted talk puts the people into shock. Once the light of truth exposes all the lies. With the nephews in control and the criminals on parole, the only thing the people can do is vote. Asa doesn't care about our Constitution. His conservatism is an illusion. Line item vetoes and higher taxes. We all voted for him once, but he won't make spending cuts. Let's all vote and say, hey Asa, we won't get fooled again.
Yes. Welcome. Welcome back to the program, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks so much for being with us. There's our latest Paul Harrell parody there. We got more on the way. Man, there's a ton. I had one idea this morning. We've got way too many ideas and right now not enough execution, but we're gonna change that. So just bear with us. We've been very, very busy this last month. The phone number, 870-275-9799. That's 870-275-9799. Joe, excellent job, by the way, Joe, on the video, getting the words out there to folks because, I don't know, that's just, especially on Facebook. You know how many times you see something like that on Facebook before you click on it? You kind of read what's on the screen first. A lot of people are doing that now before you actually click on it. So, anyway. Yeah, and all of that stuff on there is accurate. In case you were wondering, all of the jokes there's actually truth. And here's the thing. I noticed in that Northwest Arkansas editorial hit piece where they attempted to compare Conduit as the extremist with the covenant and the arm of the Lord, the covenant, the sword, and the arm of the Lord, and they attempted to do that. That was written by Asa Hutchinson's campaign. That was not written by the Northwest. I'm telling you, the talking points about the bulletproof vest and everything else, it's all over social media. It's what they're trying to put out there. But there's also this, and this is the funniest one. This is Asa Hutchinson's only defense. When you call him a progressive, or you call him a liberal, as I've done many times, and you then back it up with policy that he has enacted that is progressive and is liberal, i.e. not conservative, you know what their reaction is? This is the reaction, and it's the most establishment thing that Asa could say. He really needs to work on it. This is a terrible campaign strategy for Asa Hutchinson. You can't call me a liberal. I've been a Republican for 40 years, or I've been a Republican all my life, or I worked to build this party. You can't call me a liberal because I've been a Republican. As if that is a legitimate, oh, really? 40 years? Wait, you did what with the bulletproof vest? Wait, you worked for the state party? Wait, you ran 2 statewide elections and lost? Wait, you did all that back when it was hard to be a Republican? I'm sorry, you're right. There's no way you can be a liberal, sir. That's preposterous. That is absolutely preposterous argument. Most people see through that. Just because you have, it really just comes down to is like, well, don't hold me accountable for my actions today because I paid my dues back when I was younger. that's not a legitimate argument. Now, maybe it is for, folks on the left. I mean, that they eat that stuff up. They're all about the cult of personality and everything else. But folks on the right really just want to talk about the issues and ideas, and they want to make sure they get somebody in there who actually believes what they say, So, anyways, but if you go read that Northwest Arkansas Democrat Gazette piece, again, we mentioned it yesterday, that editorial there where it was written basically in my opinion, it was written basically by the campaign staff because it was based on, bullet point campaign talking points. You can tell that it was like, well, they're making fun of the idea that you would call somebody who's worked that long in the Republican Party a liberal. They're making like, isn't that so stupid? How could they ever call him a liberal? Well, I mean, I'm sure John McCain did some good things early on in his political career. I mean, I don't know that, honestly, but all right, let's say I'm sure he did some good things some at some point that the people agreed with, right? But I mean, at this point, he is actually, he works against I think, the interest of the majority of the American people, not to mention the people of Arizona. And just because he's been in the Republican for, 100 years, that doesn't matter. It's probably about 100 years. That's not a well. How dare you? And people, and the thing is, it is the McCain defense. I mean, Asa is employing what is the McCain defense because that's what he says. If somebody questions him, I mean, how dare you? I've been doing this for years. I've been, before you were born, I've been working. That's the attitude that a lot of people have when they just feel like it's their turn. It's their turn to, that they apparently earned this just because they, paid their dues or something like that. And I don't know for sure, I guess. I don't know for sure, but I mean, that attitude is probably not very helpful or conducive to great leadership. Number 870-275-9799. So we have, I guess, let's see, this is Leveda on Facebook. So what is the tax exemption for the air we breathe? Since we're so blessed, they would allow exemptions on all these items they could tax us on. Well, Leveda, that's a really good question. The air we breathe tax, I believe, actually was in place up until they repealed the individual mandate under Obamacare last year. I really believe that. That's essentially what that was. It's a tax for not having health insurance. But what it really was, they say, no, it's just like having car insurance. Nope, you're not born forced to drive a car. You are born forced to exist. Not the same thing, dummies. There are some really, I'm sorry, it's car insurance. You have to have car insurance, and that's a federal mandate. So of course you have to have health. Nope. I'm not bored. No babies come out of the womb, in sedans ready to hit the road, and it's not attached to them like, oh well, got to have this car. That's not how it works. But everybody is born forced to exist. They've got a beating heart in their chest. They're breathing the free air, but it's not free because the government under Obama and the Supreme Court, they said that you're breathing that air, and because you're simply breathing that air, because you simply exist, you owe the government tribute in the form of payment to buy a health insurance policy. That was the definition. I mean, folks, you got to understand, that should send chills down your spine in terms of the balance of freedom. And you know what? Instead of rejecting that outright, instead of leading us out of it, the sad thing is, what breaks my heart is that Arkansas Republicans and all the Democrats couldn't see what a tyranny that is, and they couldn't see that any system you try to get to work under that umbrella is not only morally, ethically wrong, but it's never going to be conservative. It's never going to be conservative. Back in a minute.
The news and talk of Northeast Arkansas. This is News Talk, 101.3 FM and 12:30 AM KBTM, Jonesboro, an EAB radio station.
Veer off in a different direction after he was elected to the Senate, and it created some concern or wonder what happened. And but the rest of us have been consistent. We've done what we said we'd do, and we've done voted very conservatively over the last two sessions. And so when his letter came out, and I usually read early in the morning, it was just sad to me because I know the depth of our friendship. And so after I attended two banquets and sat next to his table last Friday night a week ago, and then the next night on Saturday night, we were seated at the same table. And it was a little quiet, conversation wasn't as jovial as it typically was. But after I got home, I've got it here on my phone, at 10:28, I got a text message. And he makes several comments, but then he concludes by saying, "You are better than that. You can't excuse that vote." So I sat there in my chair, and I was just thinking, if he could just let it go. Each legislator is responsible to his or her constituents for the votes they cast. No one should be publicly attacked like he attacked us. And so if
the situation were reversed,
he would be really angry with us.
He and the establishment would be feigning this, virtue
So here's
signal.
what I wrote him back, and I'm just going to read it if you've got time.
Absolutely.
When you were near death, your colleagues prayed for you, visited you, and showed a lot of concern. You repaid our kindness with a very public and offensive letter to the editor. Every one of us have consistently voted against the private option in Arkansas Works. I would have supported SB 30 if the Arkansas Works portion had been pulled out for a separate vote. Unfortunately, it was not. When we get waiver number 2, which is reducing the eligibility rate poverty levels, from 138 down to 100%, I'll be more favorable. What you have done is the most mean-spirited thing I've ever seen happen from a friend. You will certainly have a primary opponent in the next election cycle. I would suggest you write a second letter to the editor apologizing to your colleagues.
Wow.
And then I blocked him from my phone and from my Facebook page. I just felt like I'm not going to be hammered repeatedly over this. So he's one of the few people I've blocked in my life. Wow. And I just thought I can't go any further with that.
Yeah, and if you read the letter, and I guess we read it on Thursday or Friday, and then we read State Representative Sullivan's response to it, and now your response to it. I mean, it's interesting that just a difference of opinion. He would turn around and really use Democrat talking points to try to demagogue, health care, and he'd said everything but throw people out of nursing homes, you know what I mean, or throw Granny off the cliff. That's kind of the way he went with it, and I thought that was very interesting. Now, Brent, I want to ask you this, because he also made another accusation, Senator Cooper, and I have said for a long time, anytime I talk about Senator John Cooper, it is a personal thing with me, because I helped him get elected, and I believed in him. I thought he was a guy of principle, and I thought he really did believe in smaller government, and that's not to be true. And I'm really kind of ashamed that I was used in that capacity. But hey, there's lots of people that get duped by politicians and everything else. But he made an allegation that the reason you voted against the DHS budget that had Obamacare Arkansas Works in it wasn't because of principle or your personal beliefs. It was because of Conduit, what he calls an extreme Tea Party, or extreme Tea Party organizations and Conduit. And I guess my question is that why you did it?
Absolutely not. As a matter of fact, I haven't spoken with anyone from Conduit at the top as far as Brenda goes and Joe goes.
And they're going to be on, by the way, at the bottom of this hour.
Well, for more than probably a year. And they don't call me. They don't talk to me. They don't push me to cast certain votes. What motivates me are the promises that I made to District 58 back in 2014 when they elected me for the first time ever. And I stuck by.
I think it's time we ask ourselves if we still know the freedoms that were intended for us by the Founding Fathers.
They seem to be in full-scale retreat from spending cuts and are talking about raising people's taxes again. And I have only one thing to say to the tax increasers. Go ahead, make my day.
If we lose freedom here, there's no place to escape to. This is the last stand on earth. Those who would trade our freedom for security have embarked on this downward course. Whether we believe in our capacity for self-government or whether we abandon the American Revolution and confess that a little intellectual elite in a far distant capital can plan our lives for us better than we can plan them ourselves.
Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell is on now.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the program. We're going to kind of dive into a specific issue. So the special session is over now, and we didn't get to talk about the number of bills that actually went through. It was quite broad, not really. Only thing really extraordinary was the pharmacy bill. I got a message from a pharmacist yesterday just thanking Conduit News for everything they did, everything we've done in bringing attention to the pharmacy bill issue. A lot of people do not believe they would have gotten the results they did had this program not focused the way they did. And my response to that is thank you. Thanks to all the pharmacists for your support. But I would also tell you that one of the reasons Governor Asa Hutchinson did what he did is because he has a primary opponent. And in many regards, you should be thankful for that. Jan Morgan is challenging the governor, and that is why he had to do what he did. I mean, that's why he did it. I mean, I can't tell. And there are. You could even see it in some camps. The people, just go look at the no votes. Go look at the people who voted no on the pharmacy bill. I know it's not a lot, but go look at the ones that did and go look at what they said. And if this was a different season, I got a feeling that those arguments would have been the ones coming out of all of the leadership, including the governor. But that's speculation. There's no way to prove me right on that, and there's no way to prove me wrong on that. And so, I understand it's frustrating, but that's just my speculation. There are two competing views right now about one of the bills that was amended and then passed. And we're going to dive into that. It has to do with the family counsel's Jerry Cox, who is a champion of liberty, who has been walking the halls of the Marble Palace trying to, for family values, for traditional Western values, for a very long time, since Bill Clinton was down there. There are many legislators at the Marble Palace that I will just say, before you ever thought about going to Little Rock, Jerry Cox was there fighting when no one wanted to stand up for anything that was, Jerry was standing and waving the flag of really morality when no one wanted anything to do with him. Or many people down there didn't want anything to do with pro-life legislation. And so this is throw this up there. This is from the Family Council. Did you know lawmakers nearly voted to let you unknowingly waive your right to a jury trial? Did you know lawmakers nearly voted to let you unknowingly waive your right to a jury trial? Last week, legislators convened for a special session. This is by Jerry Cox. of the Arkansas legislature. Two identical bills that caught our attention were HB 1006 by Representative Bob Ballinger and SB 5 by Senator Jeremy Hutchinson, one of the governor's nephews, nephew number 2. In a nutshell, these bills made it possible for people to unknowingly waive their right to a jury trial when signing a contract. If a company wanted to, they could include language saying that you waive your right to a jury trial in any contract they make you sign, including contracts for admission into a nursing home or hospital, leases, insurance, loans, and so on. The bills made the waiver, listen to this, the bills made the waiver irrevocable, meaning once you signed away your right to a jury trial, you couldn't get it back. The bills also said that you could not get your right to a jury trial back by arguing that you didn't read the waiver, didn't understand the waiver, or didn't know you were forfeiting your right to a jury trial. Our chief concern, Jerry Cox wrote, was that nursing homes would force residents to waive their right to a jury trial in order to live in the nursing home. If a grandmother were injured or killed due to nursing home neglect, she or her family would not be able to take her case before a jury. Now let's stop right there. Why was that even considered? The bills were filed. Now listen to this. Listen to how this worked. The bills were filed at 9 a.m. on Tuesday. 1 hour later, HB 1006 was in the hands of legislators on the House Judiciary Committee. 1 hour later. Jerry Cox writes, our staff quickly analyzed the bill and drove to the Capitol. The bill's ink practically was still wet when I sat down to testify in the committee room. As politely as I could, I told lawmakers why we opposed the bill. Quote, this affects old people, I finally said. How many old people in Arkansas even know this bill is being debated right now, end quote. Fortunately, the bill was narrowly defeated. Had family counsel not been there to oppose it, I am sure what would have happened. Several different lawmakers told me the legislation was prompted by a recent court case regarding a dispute over a loan. Lawmakers wanted to make it possible for borrowers and lenders to settle their differences outside of the jury trial system. Personally, I don't object to that, Jerry Cox writes, but passing a blanket proposal that would let elderly nursing home residents and their families unknowingly sign away their right to a jury trial is just plain irresponsible. After HB 1006 failed in committee, Senator Hutchinson amended SB 5. He narrowed the bill so that it only applied to loans, and he took out the language about people being able to sign the waiver unknowingly and the waiver being irrevocable. We decided we could live with those changes, so Family Council quit opposing SB 5. So instead of SB 5 being about nursing homes, and it would just basically became a narrow-focused bill about loans and banking, okay? This isn't the first time lawmakers have tried to take away Arkansans' right to a jury trial. 15 years ago, Family Council spent almost an entire legislative session battling it out with members of the nursing home industry who wanted to shield themselves from lawsuits. At that time, they wanted to take away nursing home residents' right to go to court. Our staff attorney, Martha Adcock, spent more hours than I can count working with lawmakers to defeat that bad proposal. I am glad we were successful last week, and I am deeply grateful to the state legislators who helped defeat HB 1006 and amend SB 5 to address our concerns. Now Jerry Cox goes on. He says, sadly, this fight is not over. State Representative Bob Ballinger, a sponsor of the bill, plans to continue advocating for the passage of the portions of the bill that lawmakers rejected. Representative Ballinger told lawmakers that work needs to continue in order to help the business community. Now, that's interesting. I'm not really sure what all that means. I do know this, and Bob Ballinger has made comments on this, and I'm going to get to those here in just a moment. I'm going to present both sides here, but there is a differing viewpoint. So I want to make that clear. But I will say, from people I talked to who were there, that whole story about Jerry Cox and him finding out that the bill was filed and then it was immediately going to be voted on, and then having to rush over there to try to oppose it. And then I'm told that when Jerry Cox got there, there was a very much of a people who were there, very much of a what are you doing here? I mean, here's the one guy with the organization with the clout that can stop some of this nonsense, and he says, no, you can't do this. This is blanket. You can't put in there to where you're going to allow deceptive practices where people are going to sign their right to a jury trial away without knowing about it. That's not right. That's not above board. And, of course, the rest of it speaks for itself. Now, let's get to Representative Bob Ballinger's comments. He made a Facebook Live post yesterday specifically about this. Now, I haven't done the research to know. He's talking about a trial attorney that's very upset with him about this bill, and I could speculate on who I think it is, but honestly, I don't. I'll try to find out while I'm commenting here. Or while we're going to listen to this audio. How about that? Here's State Representative Bob Ballinger on this bill where he is now taking criticism from the Family Council and Jerry Cox. Listen to this.
The main reason why I'm doing this video is on social media. Social media is great. You can get a lot of really good information out, but then also a lot of really false information can be put out also. And so one of my opponent's chief supporters, a person who in general doesn't like me. It's a guy I don't mind saying is a trial lawyer who is not a fan of tort reform, and so he is really been spreading a lot of flat out lies. And that's one thing about politics. I love serving the people. I love meeting people, love shaking hands and getting out, but I hate the politics of politics. I hate the lies and misinformation that's spread. And so anyway, what he's doing now, there's a thousand different just crazy things this person's done. But what he's doing now is he's attacking a bill that I just ran during the special session. So the bill I ran during the special session was an answer to a court order. And it gets kind of complicated, but in short, basically, we had a Supreme Court decision that said under the Arkansas Constitution, in order to be able to waive any right by trial by jury, you have to actually, the legislature actually has to act. And the legislature has never acted. So all we were doing was restoring the right to individuals, to people, to decide whether they want to waive their trial by jury or not. Where it becomes really important.
Stop. I want to continue with that here in a minute. Okay, so, Joe, follow with me here. You have Jerry Cox saying that the bill would have taken or deceived people into signing their right to a trial by jury away. And what State Representative Ballinger said is no, just now he said no, this was going to restore the right of the people to waive their right to a trial by jury. Does that pretty much sum up both positions? Somebody saying you're trying to take people's right to trial by jury away. State Representative Ballinger says, no, I'm trying to restore the right of the people to waive their right to a trial by jury. And I would say ... in contract law, because that's really also what this is about, is in contracts. Now, I'm a little confused because I feel like that is we clearly have we have the same issue, same bill, two different takes on it, right? And one is, let me just say, with Jerry Cox, it's a lot easier to say, oh, yeah, okay, yeah, that I'm not for that. That makes perfect sense. But to say I'm trying to restore the right of the people to waive their right I didn't know we didn't have the right to waive our right. Now, maybe business doesn't have the right to waive the right. You know what I'm saying? Maybe banks and stuff don't. Anyway, let's continue. Let's let State Representative Ballinger's comments speak for themselves here.
The bill was actually narrowed down just to address this, is when you talk about banking contracts, everybody out there who's bought a house who went on the secondary market, you do so in order to get a lower interest rate. Well, it is secondary market because you actually it's sold in a group with other loans, and it makes it where you get a cheaper interest rate. Well, we really risk the chance of losing the ability to go on the secondary market with not having that provision in there. And all my times, like going around shaking hands with people, meeting people, talking to them about what I do in Little Rock, I've heard a lot of people talk about a bunch of things. The courthouse in Madison County is really important. Property taxes in Carroll County is a big deal right now. People want to talk about guns and what's happening, especially right now with the public. People are concerned about that. A lot of really important things, but I've never once, not one time, have I ever had a constituent or a voter come to me and say, look, I want you to go down to Little Rock and I want you to pass a law to take rights away from me so you can protect me from making a bad decision myself. Never heard that once, not one time. And if I did, I wouldn't go to Little Rock if that was really what people wanted, because I went to Little Rock to get government out of the way to restore people's rights. That's what I did. And so this bill did exactly that. That's all it did, was restore the ability for people to contract and waive their right, which they have an absolute right to trial by jury, and I support that 100%. But I also support an individual's right, if they want to waive it, to be able to waive it. So, and that's all the bill did. Really, it was should have been non-controversial, although some of my opponents' supporters and opponents in general will try to find anything that they can use to attack, and I hate that, but that's life. I have a big God who's in control, and I do believe that the truth does prevail and will prevail, and so I'm not worried about that. But I do want to make sure that I am answerable to you, to my constituents, and I want to make sure that I make that clear, is that truly that bill, all it did was restore that right, which is something that we need if we want to get a lower interest rate, be able to sell things on the secondary market, and if we want to be able to do that. And by the way, without all the positive consequences of it, even if someone just wants to make a stupid mistake, they should have the right to do so without the state interfering with it. And
all right, stop.
The philosophical
so the stupid, I'm assuming here, so the stupid mistake would be to sign a contract without reading it. So this was more so, okay, so it was, okay, again, all right. He says it's to restore the right to waive your right. Jerry Cox and the Family Council saying, no, this is, people are gonna sign away their right to trial by jury without knowing about it. And again, they threw out the nursing home stuff, and they just said, okay, well, let's just focus on the banking provision, the banking side, which means that this bill is, when you talk about restoring the right, we're really talking about restoring or creating the right for banking people to put that provision in a contract, okay? This is my, as I'm working through this with you here on the air, this appears to be what it is this is about, I think it's less about the individual and it's more about business being able to craft contracts in a different way. I think that is what this seems to be more about. Anyway, you have Jerry Cox from Family Council taking one side, and you have State Representative Bob Ballinger taking the other, saying, hey, there's nothing to see here. We'll continue to follow up on this and let you know what else. We'll probably reach out to both of these men and see if we can get them on the program. All right, got to go to break, folks. Back in just a moment.
In a world full of constituents with social media accounts, bloggers just looking to increase their page views, and a talk radio host who generally is just the worst, how are Little Rock's elite supposed to conduct business with such a lack of privacy? Introducing the 1835 Club, older and more refined than other clubs that claim discretion. The 1835 Club is for seasoned political veterans that want to conduct the highest form of aristocratic business with the public's money. Are you a schemer? Do you someday want a guaranteed flow of taxpayer money to support your business? Is it your dream to see the .gov domain at the end of your business website? Don't listen to the imitators. The 1835 Club is the place where corrupt politicians and businessmen hatch their next crony schemes. At the 1835 Club, we make lobbying safe and legal. Ethics. Why, of course. All business is done in an ethical manner. Just look for the sign above the door that reads, loophole. Are you tired of the Capitol Police restricting your access to the roof after a perfectly good night of drinking? The 1835 Club has libations and a perfectly good roof. Other crony clubs that promise discretion try to lure you in by advertising bars made out of aeroplanes. Well, at the 1835 Club, instead of an airplane fuselage, we've got a space shuttle. No, not a bar. We've got an actual space shuttle that makes a daily run to the moon so members of the 1835 Club can have some real privacy away from the bloggers and taxpayers. Are you an Arkansas aristocrat? Do you want to be? It's the 1835 Club, and we work tirelessly to make sure the good old boy system remains alive and well. Join today.
Disclaimer. The 1835 Club reserves the right to deny membership to anyone who has principles. Any talk of the Declaration of Independence or the Constitution must be done in jest or, at the very least, with a condescending tone. And finally, the 1835 Club will be given a 25% commission of any agreements made between politicians and the business community.
PHP Parody.
The intersection of conservative ideas and reality. Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
Yeah, so I definitely want to get to the bottom of this. I mean, it does seem like this is more about big business and special interest than any individual. When you look at these two opinions of State Representative Bob Ballinger and Jeremy Hutchinson's bill, versus Jerry Cox and his opposition to it. Again, they narrowed it, but a lot of people still saying that, hey, this was, some people are saying that what this was, and when I first saw this, I thought, yeah, this is kind of an attempt to, well, let's just say that the tort reform amendment fails. And if this little thing got slipped through, nobody would care about the tort reform, because if the nursing home, and because the tort reform we have on the ballot that we're going to be voting on in November, that's bad, in many ways. It was written specifically for the nursing home industry. And then if you have this bill with this amendment that's going to say, oh, yeah, nursing home owners can put that in there, and you've got elderly people, now they can basically, can you imagine if you got an old person to sign that contract to come live in your nursing home? Can you imagine the lack of accountability and the things that, we got her, It's like, anyone ever see Happy Gilmore? My fingers hurt. Oh, yeah? Your fingers hurt? Oh, well, now your back's going to hurt because you just pulled landscaping duty. 870-275-9799. When we come back, let's talk about the county judge at Jefferson County. Let's talk about Judge Henry Hank Wilkins IV of Jefferson County and how he has announced his resignation after connection with Preferred Family Health Care, taking $100,000 in bribes. Also, Senator Linda Chesterfield, thanks to the Arkansas Times, we now know about her relationship monetarily with Preferred Family Health Care as a consultant. Back in just a moment.
My principles and my integrity, and actually during the second election, I basically spoke in front of constituents then saying I did what I said I would do.
Yes, you did, yeah.
And as a result, I don't even have an opponent this time around.
Mm-hmm.
So this will be the first time in Arkansas history that a Republican not only has been elected twice consecutively to the state house
from this
district, but I'm elected already for a third time. And I just think, what an honor and a privilege. And I did have some people say, hey, you can vote any way you want now because you don't have an opponent. You're safe.
Really?
So,
wow.
And this was coming from the other side, the less conservative side. And I just thought, why would I do that to the people who have trusted me? I said, no. I'm going to hold my ground. And, like I said, I wanted to get to yes. I was there when SEMA was present and presented the first waiver. And I went
from the
down.
Trump administration.
Yes, and I went downstairs and sat in on a second conversation. And I really appreciated everything that happened during that time at the Capitol. But until we can get a little more of what has been promised or we're pushing for.
Which was the cost savings.
Yes.
I mean, that's what the cost savings were.
Until we could do that, I just stuck to my initial promise and said I can't do it. But as I read, I even told Senator Cooper, if we could get the second waiver, I would be more favorable.
Right. And I think a lot of people would have been in that boat
because we're
as well.
moving the ball down the field to the end state.
Yeah.
Let's reduce the size
of the
program. Let's get working, eligible working adults off and back to work.
Right.
Let's give them something to be proud of themselves for, and that's a paycheck.
You mentioned your victory. We're talking with State Representative Brant Smith. So you mentioned you won. You had a Democrat opponent, which I believe actually was fielded by some establishment Republican interests. Or at least that's my. That was my gut feeling.
Maybe.
Because of your conservative voting record. And, of course, you defeated him by 12 points.
Right.
So it was a massive. Now, I'm just curious, Senator Cooper and the establishment, put pressure on you here. Senator Cooper writes this article, criticizes Conduit. This was almost 5 days before the governor came out and recently started criticizing Conduit. So we have a consistency of messages here in a few days. And so I'm wondering, in the past, have you ever received any pressure or anything from the establishment concerning, how you should run your campaign?
Well, back in 20...
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
So last week, multiple stories about Rusty Cranford really across the country. Rusty Cranford, Arkansas lobbyist, tried to have a New Jersey lobbyist killed, contacted a felon. The FBI claims they got recordings of it and essentially said, hey, somebody needs to go take care of this guy up in New Jersey. Yes, you would think the opposite would be true. You'd think it would be the New Jersey lobbyist coming down and putting a hit on the Ark, but that's, maybe it's more like, it's more like the movies, I guess. But it did happen here in Arkansas. It happened with Rusty Cranford. And Rusty Cranford obviously has been arrested. He was arrested before, or I guess he was arrested right after this, but on different charges. It's only now come out that he attempted to have, or he tried to contract somebody for murder. And it all has to do with preferred family health care. Now, Rusty Cranford is also, he's not charged in the John Woods case yet, but he is connected with the John Woods situation. John Woods going to trial in April. Rusty Cranford has been pinched because of preferred family health care, a Missouri-based nonprofit that receives Medicaid dollars but was using those dollars to lobby legislators and pay kickbacks. Preferred family health care, they have outfits in Missouri. They have outfits in Arkansas, and is it Oklahoma as well, I believe. So it's a pretty big operation, and it's not only. We're talking about you've got a guy who pled guilty in New Jersey. That's the guy that Rusty Cranford was trying to murder because he was going to testify against him. So, and that's what gets the federal government involved here, too, because we're dealing with federal Medicaid dollars, and that is, I mean, apparently this is going really, really deep. And matter of fact, this article by Lisa Hammersley and Jenny Monk, the headline, County Chief to Resign After Grant Admission. This has to do with Hank Wilkins IV of Jefferson County, who announced yesterday that he will resign 3 days after a federal prosecutor revealed that Wilkins admitted taking $100,000 in bribes while he was a state legislator. The 63-year-old former church pastor hasn't been charged with any crimes. Okay, but in a letter dated Monday to Governor Asa Hutchinson, Wilkins said he was profoundly sorry that my own actions make this resignation necessary. Now, I think the Pine Bluff commercial, they had a couple of op-eds out there saying, we want you to resign. You're a disgrace. It's a shame and everything else, and it clearly is. He said he is resigning at the request of some members of the Jefferson County Quorum Court. And but the resignation is not in effect until 12 a.m. Thursday. Okay, so Wilkins is a former state rep, is that right? Yeah. So we keep going down here. Let's see, talking about resign. We have some people saying he was a good man. I want to get to this part here about Rusty Cranford. Hang on. The $100,000 in bribes were given as donations to the Pine Bluff Church where Wilkins was pastor, according to Assistant U.S. Attorney Stephen Molenrich. King, who faces Jefferson County Sheriff Gerald Robertson in the Democratic primary for the county judge's job, said he would like to bring auditors in to investigate. Okay. We could keep going. Okay. So here's the prosecutor here. Molenrich made the statements about Wilkins' bribery admission during indicted lobbyist Milton Russell Rusty Cranford's arraignment Friday in U.S. District Court in Springfield, Missouri, as prosecutors asked that Cranford be denied bail. Part of the reason they're asked that he's being denied bail is also because he tried to have a guy killed. Molenrich alleged that Cranford plotted to kill one witness and persuade others, including Wilkins, to lie to investigators. So that's what it was. So he's trying to get, okay, so Rusty Cranford was trying to get Wilkins to not fess up to the $100,000 in bribes. In a story a couple of days ago, we find out that as many as 20 legislators could be ensnared in this, and several of them have already told the FBI what they would say in court. Back on February 21st, Cranford was arrested because of Preferred Family Healthcare of Springfield. They have 47 sites here in the state of Arkansas. 47. Cranford received bribes because through lobbying to obtain state grants and other taxpayer money. Cranford has pled innocent, but it remains in jail, presumably because he tried to have a guy murdered. I cannot stress that enough. He tried to have a guy murdered in New Jersey. Let me say that again. A guy steals a ton of money, and it may be the linchpin for a lot of this stuff, and he was about to get pinched, so instead of just fess up, he decides to silence and murder people who are going to testify against him. Obviously, we can see the natural human progression there because this is what people do when their world kind of starts, they get more and more desperate, so they're more and more capable of darker and darker things. Okay, I get all of that. I'm not talking about that. That's not the reason I'm bringing it up. The reason I'm bringing it up is because I want you to know that the Medicaid mafia was empowered when Arkansas expanded our Medicaid program and gave a $2 billion windfall to Blue Cross Blue Shield and everyone else who gets a taste, including politicians and lobbyists who get rich off of the scheme. People are throwing around money like it's nothing because they have been made rich. Yada, yada, yada. You do something illegal because you've stolen taxpayer money. You're caught. Yada, yada, yada. You try to have a guy murdered. Do you understand why government needs to be small, limited in its scope and focus? Because we will do these things, because we will pursue our own interests, and we certainly will do it, and use the government to do so. That's why government needs to be so small in its size and scope and focus. Because we as humans can't be trusted. Because we will try to wield the power over our fellow man. That's what this is all about. Once again, everything about Medicaid expansion confirms my worldview as a conservative, day in and day out. Wilkins made the bribery admission in a February 22nd statement to the FBI. Federal prosecutors said Cranford made donations to Wilkins' church that were actually bribes for his support as a state lawmaker from 2011 to 2015. Cranford's indictment and Wilkins' admission. Listen to this. Biggest part, highlight this paragraph, Joe. Cranford's indictment and Wilkins' admission are part of a larger set of interconnected investigations and prosecutions involving public corruption and the misuse and embezzlement of public funds entrusted to tax-exempt charities in the Western District of Missouri and in the Eastern and Western Districts of Arkansas, end quote. That's a quote from federal prosecutors. They said in arguing against Cranford's release, also, he tried to have a guy murdered. Now, Cranford, obviously, he was the manager of Alternative Opportunities, and so let's talk about where else this goes. So, Hank Wilkins IV is a Jefferson County judge, soon to be ex-judge because he's going to resign. He's the guy that took $100,000. Now, Jefferson County. Speaking of Jefferson County, I believe Jefferson County is in Senate District 30. Do we have a Ballotpedia up for Senate District 30? Or did I close it out? Do I see a Ballotpedia over there? Will you Ballotpedia Senate District 30? I just want to make sure, Joe, when you get a chance. Because I think Jefferson County's in that. It actually 30 stretches up into parts of like North Little Rock, kind of surrounds Little Rock, but then it goes basically like directly south. Yeah, that was it right there. It's fine. We'll just, go ahead and throw this up on the screen. This is Ballotpedia. Arkansas Senate District 30 is represented by Democratic Senator Linda Chesterfield. Do you see that right there? And that is down there. I believe that's easily Jefferson County. So, because Little Rock's right there.
Yeah, North Little Rock is right in this neck.
Yeah, okay. So, it's a pretty large district. The Arkansas Times is reporting that records now show a financial tie between the senator from District 30, Senator Linda Chesterfield, and the health agency she helped get a grant. Okay. Max Brantley reports Senator Linda Chesterfield, a Little Rock Democrat, reported being paid as a diversity outreach consultant in 2016 by Preferred Family Healthcare of Springfield, Missouri, an organization she helped receive state money on top of millions it receives through the state-run Medicaid program. So what'd she give? GIF money? Is that what she did? Senator Chesterfield responded to Max Brantley in the Arkansas Times, and she admits that she worked for Preferred Family Healthcare for 6 months in 2016. I did an honest day's work for an honest day's pay, and no one has questioned me about this matter but you. In her follow-up statement, she said, I used the info from 2016 and realized I made a mistake in 2017. My employment ended in November or December of 2016. That is why I amended my report. As soon as they are notified of a mistake, they have 30 days to correct on their reports. That's now the new law, thanks to Senator John Woods, who's going to trial in April. Do you understand the level of corruption we are talking about here, people? It is layer upon layer upon layer, and the onion never ends. I have been asking, who are consultants? Are you a consultant? Are you a consultant? I mean, kudos to the Arkansas Times for figuring this out. Senator Linda Chesterfield is a consultant, or was a consultant, making extra money as a consultant of diversity for preferred family health care, and she funneled them money. Again, it is against federal law for a nonprofit entity that receives Medicaid dollars to turn those dollars out to pay lobbyists for more federal money. I mean, it's like, I don't even know how it works, but I mean, it's essentially ends up being like a Ponzi scheme. It could be like a Ponzi scheme. I'm sure it's actually quite profitable, like real profits. I mean, she said that she made what? On her annual statements of financial interest show income of more than $12,500 from preferred family health. They got an extra zero on there. You see that? It's a typo. $12,500. No, it's not. Or the comma's in the wrong spot. No, that 12.5 is a standard financial interest. That's when if you're making above 12.5, you got to report. So an income of more than 12.5 from PFH in both 2016 and 2017. Her reports list an address for PFH that corresponds with the Springfield address. But see, now she's saying she didn't work. So her reports showed that she worked in 2017. She now says she only worked in 2016, and she made the correction. So that's interesting. You think you would know if you were getting extra money or not from Preferred Family Healthcare as a consultant in 2017 or 2016, and you wouldn't make a mistake on your reports. I just think that you might realize that. But anyway, we have the first person really who's kind of been exposed here. How many more legislators are going to be exposed as this? How many more? This is the real question. It should be on every journalist's mind in the state. How many more legislators are also consultants for health care or Medicaid-related companies? How many more? That's the question. And I want to remind you that Senator Brian King has tried to get a simple disclosure law passed 4 times now that would require legislators to disclose if they are consultants. Not that there's necessarily anything wrong with that, although the FBI investigations suggest that there is something more nefarious, and that's probably why he couldn't get the law passed, because it would have required them to disclose information that is generally going to be viewed as illegal activity. Let me know what you think about all of this. Again, Jefferson County judge takes $100,000 in bribes, exposes this all, and in the same process, now we have Senator Linda Chesterfield is also taking money from Preferred Family Healthcare, or she did take money from Preferred Family Healthcare as a diversity outreach consultant. Where else will this lead? I don't know, but I think we are at the beginning of this giant statue of corruption. We're at the stone feet of it. We're going to see the whole thing before too long. Who knows? Maybe even before the primaries get here in May. Back in just a moment.
Protecting your business means protecting your data. But is your business really prepared to handle the growing threat of things like cybercriminals and ransomware? At iTex, they're committed to deploying the best security solutions to protect your business and your bottom line. Security threats are constantly evolving. So are security needs. Be proactive now and equip your business with the best cybersecurity available with iTex. Call them today for a free consultation at 870-336-9778. That's 870-336-9778 or itexusa.com. If you're like me, you believe that small business is the heart of Arkansas's economic engine, and it should be viewed that way by the politicians in Little Rock. Conduit for Commerce also believes, like you and I believe, policies that achieve less regulation and lower taxation help small business in Arkansas thrive. Other policies like small, constitutionally consistent government and reducing citizen dependency on government keeps it from growing and expanding its influence on our daily lives. Conduit for Commerce works every day to educate the general public and legislators on these important priorities in the name of Arkansas small business. By the way, contributions to Conduit for Commerce are tax deductible. Log on now to conduitforcommerce.org and click on Contact Us on the right side of the page. That's conduitforcommerce.org. Go there now and learn the facts on protecting small business in Arkansas.
Need your daily news fix? Don't forget to tune in to Conduit News Radio with Paul Harrell.
All right, check this out real quick. Healthaffairs.org has a new report out. There's a lot to learn from state Medicaid experiments, but only if they're carefully evaluated. Yeah, I thought they were going to say carefully crafted, too. Don't worry. Oh, check it out. They looked at state leaders from coast to coast are experimenting, considering applying for a host of new Medicaid waivers. Kentucky, Arkansas, and Indiana, they mentioned new waiver approvals there. Scrolling on, states need to know what works and what hasn't worked. And listen to what they say about Arkansas. We do have some early examples of useful evaluations taking place in the states. In the 4 years since Arkansas requested and received an 1115 waiver, much information has emerged from the state and other evaluators about what has worked and what hasn't in its efforts to use premium assistance for Medicaid beneficiaries to receive private insurance. For example, they learned that very few Arkansas Medicaid enrollees participated in the health savings accounts introduced by the plan. It's because they were voluntary. We know from Arkansas's experience, however, that states can use Medicaid to strengthen private markets while offering residents solid access to coverage, albeit at higher costs. So what does that mean, strengthen markets? Well, that means give Blue Cross and Blue Shield taxpayer money and a guaranteed revenue stream. That's what it means. Pretty simple. Pretty simple. Scrolling down here to robust. Go to find the headline robust there, Joe. In addition to exploring the outcomes of new programs, evaluations should also assess the way in which they were implemented. For instance, many states are proposing new policies that are more administratively complex and may be very challenging to implement, such as the creation of new integrated data systems or consumer-focused communication campaigns. States also need to understand the resources needed to launch a new program. For instance, approximately 7,000 Arkansas Medicaid beneficiaries actively participated in the state's new premium assistance program for private insurance. The beneficiaries collectively contributed roughly $426,000 in monthly premium payments, according to an analysis by the Arkansas Center for Health Improvement. However, the implementation incurred $9 million in administrative costs over 18 months for the state of Arkansas. So you're telling me it's a welfare program, but we're going to make sure they have skin in the game because we're conservatives and we're going to make sure they're paying their fair share. 7,000 people out of 330,000 participated. They only paid $426,000, and it cost you $9 million to monitor and get the data of the 426,000. Yeah, congratulations. Congratulations, you failures. Ugh. And yet, I wanted to share those two paragraphs with you, or three or whatever. And yet, the same people who brought you this mess are still credible, according to the media. They're still calling the shots. They're still figuring out how to craft the next step. And it's pretty pathetic. Next up, Amazon vendors team up for clout. You don't have this one, Joe, but it's okay. All right, so people who are vendors that utilize Amazon, they do a lot of hard work, and they're now thinking of essentially, from what I can tell, it's like the first step before you unionize, which I wouldn't be a fan of, but they are forming what is known right now as the Online Merchants Guild. And they're trying to basically unite so that Amazon will take them more seriously. Specifically, they don't want to pay internet sales tax, and a lot of people are now starting, talking. Of course, Arkansas almost passed the unconstitutional internet sales tax. I was listening to the Impression of the Session flashback yesterday, and Mickey Gates really said it. Can you imagine if some other state somewhere else passed a law and you here in Arkansas had to know about it and had to comply with it? How confusing that would be. That's essentially what a lot of these states are doing, but they're so greedy. And it comes back to what we said last hour. There are two ways to look at tax reform, and this is it's unfortunate, but I think the task force is looking at it, again, the Jerry Seinfeld joke. What's the maximum allowable human dosage, right? Figure out what will kill me and then back it off a little bit. That's what they're doing with taxes. Figure out how much we could tax the people to destroy the economy and back it off a little bit. That is essentially their philosophy, in my opinion. So what would be nice is if we don't worry about the maximum amount of taxation, and instead we worry about the minimum of government expense. What is the bare minimum it takes for government to survive? That, ladies and gentlemen, is what you should find. What is the bottom? Right now we've got so much fat, but what is the bottom, right? And those are the different mentalities. And but politicians, man, if their dream is to figure out a way to raise your taxes without you figuring it out, without you knowing about it. And that would mean that their dream is a form of deception. And you just got to understand that. If you'll understand that one concept, that politicians, whether they knowingly do it or not, they really like the long game of deception. If you'll understand that, that's the most American frame of reference, to have a very healthy skepticism of those in power over us. If you'll understand that one point, it'll take you so far in terms of interpreting what these people are doing. You have to read between the lines every single time. This is Conduit News Radio. Contrary to what Governor Asa Hutchinson says, this is real news. Arkansas, we'll see you tomorrow. Be safe.